My fiancé sent me to prison to save his white moonlight. Everyone said I was finished for life, but he waited at the door on the day of my release. His eyes were red as he said he regretted it and wanted to start over with me. He didn't know. The cold-faced prosecutor, who personally convicted me during the trial that year, had been visiting me in prison every month for the past 5 years. He also came today, took off his uniform, and placed a ring on my finger. You've suffered, Mrs. Sterling. Now it's time we get justice. The day I walked out of the prison gates, the sunlight was almost blinding. It had been 5 years. I raised my hand to shield my eyes, taking a moment to adjust to the long-lost light. Not far from the entrance, a familiar Porsche was parked, and a man stood beside it. It was my former fiancé, Wyatt Vance. He wore an expensive suit, but it couldn't hide his utter dejection. A bluish stubble covered his chin, and his eyes were bloodshot. When he saw me, he almost stumbled as he ran towards me. Iris, I regret it. His voice was hoarse with a hint of pleading. Let's start over, okay? I looked at the face that had once captivated me, but my heart was like a stagnant pool, devoid of any ripples. 5 years ago, this man, in order to protect his beloved white moonlight, Clara Shaw, had personally fabricated evidence, sending me, the CFO, to court and saddling me with the stigma of economic crime for Clara Shaw's embezzlement of a huge sum of money. 5 years in prison had worn away all my love and hate. I didn't say a word, clutching the cloth bag containing a few old clothes in my hand, preparing to walk past him, but he stubbornly blocked my way. Iris, let me explain. Back then His words were interrupted by a screech of brakes. A black Hongqi sedan stopped steadily beside us. The car door opened, and a tall, straight-backed man stepped out. It was him, Orion Sterling. 5 years ago, he wore a sharp prosecutor's uniform and spoke eloquently in court, personally convicting me. He was the one who had come to visit me every month for the past 5 years. Today, he wasn't wearing a uniform, just a simple black trench coat, but he still exuded an undeniable aura of pressure. He walked straight to me, his deep gaze landing on me. Then, he took off his trench coat and draped it over my thin prison uniform. I was stunned. Wyatt Vance, standing aside, was completely shocked. He pointed at him and asked in disbelief, Prosecutor Sterling? What are you doing here? Orion Sterling ignored him, simply took out a velvet box from his pocket, opened it, and inside was a simple diamond ring. Under Wyatt Vance's bloodshot gaze, he took my left hand and slowly placed the cold ring on my ring finger. You've suffered, Mrs. Sterling. His deep voice clearly entered the ears of both Wyatt Vance and me. Now it's time we get justice. Mrs. Wyatt Vance seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world, and then rushed up in a rage, wanting to grab my hand. Iris Lynn, are you crazy? Do you know who he is? He's the one who sent you to prison. Before his hand could touch me, Orion Sterling coldly blocked it. Mr. Vance. There was no warmth in Orion Sterling's tone. It was like being quenched with ice. Please call her Mrs. Sterling. Furthermore, I was simply acting in accordance with the law, while you are the culprit who framed her. Wyatt Vance's face instantly turned liver-colored. I was escorted by Orion Sterling into the car. As the car started, I saw Wyatt Vance chasing frantically after the car in the rearview mirror, shouting my name, until his figure became a small dot. Inside the car, Orion Sterling handed me a document, not a bouquet of flowers to celebrate my release from prison. Information on the Vance family's industries. Which one do you want to start with? I was completely stunned. For the past 5 years, he had visited me every month, never saying much, just silently watching me through the glass, as if monitoring the rehabilitation of a prisoner. I thought we were cat and mouse, the judge and the criminal, but I never expected that we were actually husband and wife. Before I could recover from this huge amount of information, my phone rang. It was a text message from Wyatt Vance. He said he wanted to give me $10 million as compensation, begging me to forgive his helplessness back then. Looking at that string of numbers, I only felt irony and directly blocked him. Orion Sterling took me to a high-end apartment, saying it was my future residence. That night, Wyatt Vance found out the address from somewhere, and actually brought a group of reporters to besiege the apartment building. Flashes of light flickered constantly, and the reporters' microphones were almost poking into my face. Ms. Lynn, is it true that you and Mr. Vance broke up due to a misunderstanding? Mr. Vance said he has always felt guilty towards you. Will you accept his compensation? Wyatt Vance stood aside, putting on a look of deep affection and regret, looking at me, the guilt in his eyes seeming to overflow. He wanted to use public opinion to force me, to portray me as a money-grubbing woman who clung to a high branch and abandoned a deeply affectionate former lover after being released from prison. Just as I was surrounded, Orion Sterling's car stopped beside me. He got out of the car, silently pushed through the crowd, pulled me into his arms, and used his body to shield me from all the lenses and prying eyes. He looked at Wyatt Vance, his eyes cold and piercing. Mr. Vance harassing my wife. It seems that 5 years hasn't taught you to abide by the law. The next day, Clara Shaw asked to meet me. She is now an internationally renowned young pianist, a treasure that Wyatt Vance holds in the palm of his hand. And I am just an unemployed person with a blemish on my resume, who has just been released from prison. In the coffee shop, she wore designer clothes and stirred the latte in her cup elegantly, her gaze toward me full of condescending pity. Iris Lynn, long time no see, you look much more haggard. She spoke hypocritically. Wyatt told me he went to see you. He's just soft-hearted and feels sorry for you. You don't really think he still wants to get back together with you, do you? I didn't say anything, quietly watching her perform. Seeing that I ignored her, the smile on her lips deepened. Don't be ungrateful. The person he loves has always been me. For me, he could send you to prison. Now, of course, he can make you lose everything again for me. You can't fight me. 5 years ago you couldn't, and you still can't now. She seemed to enjoy this feeling of being in control, proudly showing off her achievements of 5 years ago. She said that she had been bewitched and used a large sum of the company's money for investment, which resulted in a complete loss. Seeing that she was about to be ruined, Wyatt Vance, in order to protect her reputation and future as a pianist, designed it step by step, used my trust in him, and fabricated all the accounts, pushing all the blame onto me, the CFO. Do you know? On the day of the trial, Wyatt was watching you from the audience. His palms were full of sweat. He said that as long as I'm fine, sacrificing you is worth it. Clara Shaw's voice carried a cruel smile. As she spoke, she deliberately picked up her coffee, exclaimed oops, and spilled the scalding liquid all over my clothes. She wanted to see me embarrassed and wanted to hear me scream. But before the coffee could splash on me, I grabbed her wrist a step faster. The force was so great that her expression changed instantly. What are you doing? Let go. She cried out in pain. I looked at her panicked eyes and slowly poured all the coffee, not a drop left, onto her expensive white dress. The brown stains spread quickly, becoming unsightly. I leaned close to her ear and said calmly in a voice that only the two of us could hear. Clara Shaw, the game has just begun. This time, I'll make you unable to even cry. Clara Shaw's personal piano concert is coming up soon. Wyatt Vance spared no expense to please her, not only booking the best concert hall in the city, but also launching a massive publicity campaign. The media was full of praise for their fairy tale love, depicting me as a malicious ex-girlfriend who was unwilling to be abandoned and tried to sabotage them in every possible way. Wyatt Vance's mother also found me and threw a check arrogantly in front of me. $50 million. Take the money and get as far away as possible. Stop embarrassing yourself and pestering my son. A woman like you who has been in jail isn't even worthy of carrying Clara's shoes. I tore the check to shreds in front of her face. Tell your son, I find it dirty. Wyatt Vance was probably infuriated by my attitude. He used the Vance family's local connections to make sure I couldn't find any decent job. And even if I tried to rent a better apartment, the landlord would back out right before signing the contract. He wanted to push me to the brink, to make me understand that I was nothing without him. Late that night, he called, his tone laced with a condescending air of charity. Iris, haven't you had enough? Come back. I'll buy you a house and hire a few maids to take care of you. I can keep you, like a canary in a cage. Just be obedient and don't get in Clara's way anymore. Listening to the hypocritical voice on the other end of the line, my stomach churned. I hung up the phone. I sat in the dark living room, hugging my knees, feeling the same hopeless despair from 5 years ago engulf me once more. Then the door opened, and Orion Sterling returned. He seemed to have just come back from a business trip, still carrying the dust of travel. He turned on the light, saw the suppressed coldness and hatred in my eyes, and after a moment of silence, placed a file in front of me. The time has come. I opened the file. Inside was a sealed record. Evidence I had desperately collected when I was desperate back then, but didn't have time to present at the trial. And under the file, there was also a voice recorder. Orion Sterling pressed play. What came out was the entire conversation from yesterday afternoon in the coffee shop, where Clara Shaw admitted to me, in her own voice, how she embezzled public funds and how Wyatt Vance helped her frame me. On the night of Clara Shaw's solo piano concert, the concert hall was packed. Under the spotlight, she wore a pure white dress, like a princess untouched by the world. Wyatt Vance sat in the middle of the front row, looking at his dazzling lover on stage with infatuated eyes, as if she were a rare treasure. The flashes of media cameras kept flashing, recording this fairy tale love like a prince and princess. At the end of a piece, applause thundered. Clara Shaw gracefully got up and bowed, wearing the brightest smile that only a victor could have. Just as she was about to play the last encore piece to push the atmosphere to a climax, the beautiful background on the huge LED screen behind her suddenly went black with a crackle. Everyone was stunned. Immediately afterward, a clear female voice came from the speakers. "You said it was you who embezzled public funds, and Wyatt framed me to protect you?" That was my voice. Of course, otherwise what? He loves me. What does sacrificing you matter? That was Clara Shaw's sharp and triumphant voice, echoing throughout the concert hall, crystal clear. The whole audience was in an uproar. Reporters, like sharks smelling blood, frantically pointed their cameras at Clara Shaw, who had turned pale on stage. Heavens! So Iris Lynn was wronged. Clara Shaw is the criminal? And she had her ex-boyfriend send his fiancée to prison. How vicious! Clara Shaw panicked and tried to turn off the sound system, but her legs went weak and she fell awkwardly on the stage. Wyatt Vance rushed to the backstage in a rage, but was surrounded by the throng of reporters. "Mr. Vance, is the recording true? Did you really frame your fiancée, Ms. Lynn, for Clara Shaw's sake?" In the chaos, my phone rang. It was Wyatt Vance, his voice like he wanted to eat me alive. "Iris Lynn, you're crazy. You're trying to ruin her." I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in my apartment, watching the endless stream of car lights below. My tone calm as if I were talking about something that had nothing to do with me. "Don't worry, Wyatt Vance. This is just the first congratulatory gift I'm sending you." In the aftermath of the scandal, the whole city was discussing Clara Shaw and Wyatt Vance's scandal. Clara Shaw's reputation was ruined, all her commercial performances were cancelled, and she became a rat everyone wanted to beat. I returned home, and Orion Sterling was sitting on the sofa, as if waiting for me. "Why are you helping me to this extent?" "Just because we are husband and wife." He was silent for a moment, then took an old brown paper bag from the study and handed it to me. "Look at this and you'll understand." I opened the paper bag. Inside were some yellowed letters and an old investigation report. Orion Sterling's voice slowly sounded in my ear. His father, Harrison Sterling, was an honest businessman and a partner of Wyatt Vance's father. 20 years ago, the Vance and Shaw families joined forces to swindle Harrison Sterling out of all his assets and falsely accused him of a huge illegal debt. Harrison Sterling, unable to bear the humiliation, eventually jumped from the top floor of the company. And at that time, my father, under the coercion and enticement of the Vance family, also participated in this conspiracy. My heart sank heavily. "My dad, Your father's conscience was not completely gone," Orion Sterling said. "Afterward, he lived in guilt and secretly collected evidence of the Vance and Shaw family's crimes, preparing to hand it over to me back then. But the day before we were supposed to meet, he died in a car accident." My mind went blank. So my father's death was not an accident at all. I entered the procuratorate system and worked my way up step by step to avenge my father and retrieve the evidence that belonged to my father. Orion Sterling looked at me, his eyes deep and complex. "And you are your father's only daughter, and the only person the Vance family will fear. Marrying you is both to protect you and to complete the revenge of our two generations. We are fellow travelers bound together by hatred." I finally understood. There was no love between us, only a carefully planned revenge. And I was the most important pawn in his revenge plan. Clara Shaw's scandal became a mountain weighing down on the Vance family. The Vance family's stock had fallen to the daily limit for several days in a row, and the company's reputation plummeted. Wyatt Vance's father, Mr. Vance, was a thorough businessman. Seeing that Clara Shaw had become a liability to the Vance family, he immediately ordered Wyatt Vance to break up with her and sever ties. You're going to drag the entire Vance family down for a woman? Have you lost your mind? Clara is innocent. It's all that bitch Iris Lynn's fault. Dad, you can't do this to her. I'm telling you, if you still recognize me as your dad, then break up with her immediately. Otherwise, get out of the Vance family. The father and son argued fiercely in the Vance family mansion, and eventually broke up unhappily. Wyatt Vance chose love, moved out of the Vance family, and stayed by Clara Shaw's side, trying to use his last strength to do public relations for her. Internally, the Vance family suffered a huge rift because of this incident. I looked at the information Orion Sterling gave me, knowing that the time had come. I anonymously sent a detailed report to the tax authorities. Inside were all the ironclad evidence of the Vance family's company's years of tax evasion and accounting fraud, which Orion Sterling's father had left behind and my father had supplemented later. The evidence was solid and irrefutable. A week later, a joint investigation team from the tax authorities officially moved into the Vance Group. The Vance family was immediately in a state of chaos, surrounded by enemies on all sides. I stood in front of the window of Orion Sterling's apartment, watching Mr. Vance's aged and embarrassed face as he was surrounded by reporters on the news. Feeling no joy, only a cold numbness. Orion Sterling came up from behind and put a coat on my shoulders. Are you cold? I shook my head. I knew this was just the beginning. The Vance family's winter had just arrived. Seeing that the Vance family's big tree was about to fall, Clara Shaw, the vine clinging to the tree, immediately began to look for a new way out for herself. She thought she was being very secretive, but she didn't know that her every move was under Orion Sterling's surveillance. She began to secretly contact Wyatt Vance's biggest rival, the heir to the Hayes Group. She wanted to use the Vance family's trade secrets she knew to exchange for the Hayes family's protection and wealth. Wyatt Vance, for her sake, had broken with his father, giving up the inheritance of the Vance family, racking his brains every day trying to help her save her reputation. But what awaited him was the most fatal betrayal of his lover. When Wyatt Vance saw the photos of Clara Shaw and Mr. Hayes having a pleasant conversation in a high-end restaurant, he completely broke down. He rushed back to the luxurious apartment Gu Jingzhou had purchased for her and questioned her, brandishing the photos. The two of them erupted in an unprecedentedly fierce argument. Seeing that things were exposed, Clara Shaw completely tore off her disguise. Yes, I did contact Mr. Hayes. So what? Wyatt Vance, did you think I really loved you? She screamed hysterically, venting all her resentment. What I loved was just the identity of Mrs. Vance. It was your money. Now that the Vance family is finished, you can't give me anything anymore, so why should I stay with you? If it weren't for your stupidity, taking the initiative to stand up and take the blame for me, do you think I would have even looked at you? I would have found a better catch long ago. These vicious and hurtful words were like sharp knives, stabbing fiercely into Wyatt Vance's heart. He was probably driven mad with rage, forgetting that he had inadvertently turned on his phone's recording function because he wanted to record Clara Shaw playing the piano. That harsh and cruel conversation was completely recorded. The white moonlight he had once gone all out to protect personally trampled his love and dignity underfoot, crushing them into pieces. That night it poured. Wyatt Vance stood downstairs in front of my apartment building, like a soulless statue, letting the cold rain soak him from head to toe. He had come to me, bringing his heart that was riddled with wounds. I didn't let him in, just coldly looked at him through the window all night. The next morning, I opened the door, ready to go out. As if he had finally waited for salvation, he rushed over with bloodshot eyes and knelt down in front of me with a thump. The once spirited and superior young master of the Vance family was now as wretched as a stray dog. He raised his hand and slapped himself hard in the face, again and again, loudly and muffled. Elise, I'm sorry. I was blind. I'm a bastard. His tears mixed with the rain, sliding down his face. I mistook a fisheye for a pearl, and sincerity for trash. I was wrong, please forgive me, okay? Please. He took out the still flashing red light on his cell phone from his soaked pocket and handed it to me. This is a recording of her admitting it herself. She admits she doesn't love me, admits that I was stupid back then. I am willing to testify in court, to help you overturn the case, to help you send her to prison. I don't want anything anymore, I just want you. Just want you to look at me again, like before. Looking at his pathetic and ridiculous appearance, the last trace of ripple in my heart disappeared. I took the phone, my tone without a trace of warmth. I don't need your forgiveness. I just want you and her to pay the price for what you have done. His crying stopped abruptly, and he looked up at me in disbelief. I closed the door, cutting off his desperate wailing from outside. Some mistakes, once made, are never forgiven. With the recording of Clara Shaw admitting her crime and Wyatt Vance, the key witness, the process of overturning the case started immediately. Orion Sterling was highly efficient and quickly applied for a retrial. I stood in court again. Unlike 5 years ago, this time, I was no longer the isolated, defenseless defendant. Orion Sterling took off his prosecutor's uniform and sat beside me as my attorney. He wore a well-tailored suit, his expression was stern, his aura strong. He was clear, logical, and systematically defeated every lie of Clara Shaw's lawyer. Clara Shaw in the dock, her face was pale, trembling constantly. She probably never thought that Wyatt Vance would really stand up to testify against her. Wyatt Vance, as a witness, stood in the witness box. His whole person seemed to have been taken away. His eyes were empty, his voice hoarse, painfully recounting the entire truth of how, 5 years ago, he had colluded with Clara Shaw step by step to fabricate evidence and send me to prison. Every word was like a heavy hammer, hitting Clara Shaw's vital spot. It also shattered the last remaining fantasy I had about him. The evidence was irrefutable. Clara Shaw slumped in the dock, sobbing. Finally, the judge solemnly announced the verdict. I, Iris Lynn, was found not guilty and released. And Clara Shaw, for the crimes of embezzlement and false accusation, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. When the bailiff took away Clara Shaw, who was crying and shouting, "I didn't do it, I'm innocent," my tears finally couldn't help but flow down. Not joy, not excitement, but all the suppressed grievances and unwillingness of the past 5 years finally found an outlet for venting at this moment. Orion Sterling reached out and gently grasped my cold hand. His palm was warm and powerful. Iris Lynn, it's all over. After Clara Shaw went to prison, the Vance family also ushered in the final judgment. The charge of tax evasion was established, the company was fined a huge sum, and the capital chain was completely broken. Coupled with the previous stock market turmoil caused by the loss of reputation, this commercial building finally collapsed. Vance Group officially declared bankruptcy. Mr. Vance turned white overnight and was taken away by the police for investigation for suspected multiple economic crimes. Wyatt Vance sold all the real estate and luxury cars under his name to pay off debts, but in the end, it was still a drop in the bucket. He fell from the clouds to the mud, truly becoming penniless. The last time I received a message from him was late at night. The message content was very simple, only 5 words. "Iris, I owe you." From then on, he disappeared as if evaporated from the world, never appearing again. My great revenge was avenged, and all those who had hurt me were punished as they deserved. I thought I would be ecstatic, that I would feel a sense of elation. But when everything settled down, I looked at the empty room, and all that remained in my heart was a huge sense of confusion and emptiness. I had no idea where to go in the future. Orion Sterling seemed to sense my emotions, said nothing, just drove me to the beach. The sea breeze blew on my face, carrying a salty scent. He gently hugged me from behind. This embrace was not like a lover, but more like the comfort between comrades. "Iris Lynn." His deep voice sounded in my ear. "The past is over. From now on, try to live for yourself." I looked at the distant scenery of the sea and the sky, my eyes gradually becoming wet. Live for myself. Can I still do it? With the end of the revenge, my relationship with Orion Sterling also became a little subtle. We were a legally married couple, but more like allies who had fought side by side. Now that the great revenge had been avenged, it seemed that the alliance should also expire. I waited for him to come home in the living room. A divorce agreement I had drafted placed on the table. Orion Sterling, thank you for everything you have done for me. I pushed the agreement in front of him. Your great revenge has been avenged, and I have also cleared my name. I think our marriage should also end. He glanced at the agreement. The expression on his face instantly darkened. The air seemed to freeze. End. He sneered, his tall figure with a sense of oppression, walking towards me step by step. Iris Lynn, you want to kick me away after you've used me? I was stunned. Why does this sentence sound so familiar? It was just that the roles of the perpetrator and the victim were completely reversed. I was forced into the corner of the sofa by him, nowhere to retreat. He leaned down, his hands propped up on either side of my body, completely encircling me in his arms. Mrs. Sterling, his beautiful thin lips were almost brushing against my ear, his warm breath spilling over the side of my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. Now that you've reclaimed justice, shouldn't you also fulfill your duties as a wife? His voice was low and hoarse, carrying a dangerous kind of seduction. I looked into his eyes, so close, dark and vast like the night sky. My face felt burning hot, and my heart was beating so fast it felt as if it might burst out of my chest. For the first time in 5 years, I was blushing because of a man. And this man was the one who sent me to prison with his own hands, then personally pulled me back out, my husband. I began trying to understand Orion Sterling's life. We were married in name, yet more distant than strangers. He was a man so disciplined that it almost felt rigid. Waking up on time every day, morning jogging, going to work, coming home, reading case files. Serious, stoic, sparing with words. I once thought he was nothing but a cold, emotionless legal machine. But gradually, I discovered the clumsy tenderness hidden beneath his icy exterior. When I cooked, he would quietly move the cilantro aside, because he remembered I didn't eat it. When my stomach hurt during my period, he would silently prepare warm brown sugar ginger tea for me. Sometimes I woke screaming from the nightmare of those 5 years in prison. Each time, I would find myself tightly held in his arms, his hand gently patting my back like soothing a child. I always thought he was nice to me in prison because he had some plan. Until one day, I met the prison officer who used to take care of me. She held my hand and whispered, "Little Lynn, you really should thank your Orion. These 5 years, he didn't just visit you once a month. He arranged everything long ago so people inside would look after you. Otherwise, with your delicate skin and tender bones, you would have been bullied to death the moment you went in." And when he came every month, it wasn't a visitation. He came to inspect the place, to check whether you'd been wronged. My heart felt like something had struck it hard. So during the years I thought I was utterly alone, there had always been a pair of eyes quietly watching over me from behind. His love was deep and silent, yet warm enough to melt my long-frozen heart. One weekend, I helped Orion Sterling tidy his study. At the very back of the bookshelf, I accidentally found a locked metal box. By sheer impulse, I tried my birthday as the code. With a click, it opened. Inside wasn't the confidential documents I imagined, only a thick, yellowed diary. I flipped open the first page. The neat handwriting belonged to a young Orion Sterling. Turned out, the courtroom wasn't the first time we met. We had known each other back in university. At that time, he was the most notorious poor student in the law school, cold, aloof, always alone. And I was the adored beauty of the music department. We were supposed to be two parallel lines that would never cross. Until that afternoon in the library, when he nearly fainted from low blood sugar and stomach illness beside the shelves. I happened to walk by and casually handed him the piece of chocolate I had in my pocket. I still remember the way he looked up at me, surprised, guarded, with a barely noticeable fragility. I never thought much of that small moment, but he remembered it for years. In his diary he wrote, "That was the first sweet thing I ever tasted, and the first warm smile I had ever seen. Her appearance was like a beam of light piercing into my gray life. She said life is too bitter, so I should eat more sweets." Iris Lynn, so that's her name. I was never a tool in his revenge plan. I was the only light he had hidden deep in his heart for many years. My tears fell one by one onto the pages, smudging his handwriting. I hugged the diary and cried uncontrollably. All those years when I was unaware. Someone had loved me so deeply. When Orion Sterling returned, he saw me clutching the diary, crying like a mess. He froze, then rushed over, awkwardly wiping away my tears. What happened? Who bullied you? I shook my head and for the first time, threw my arms tightly around him. I buried my face in his solid chest, listening to his strong heartbeat, and choked out softly beside his ear. Orion Sterling. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me when I was in my darkest place. Thank you for loving me for so many years. His body stiffened instantly, then he wrapped his arms around me with even more strength. We held each other quietly for a long time. Outside, the city lights gradually turned on, shining like a galaxy. I looked up at him, gazing into his deep eyes and whispered, "Tell me, are we starting over?" He lowered his head and answered all my questions with a gentle, lingering kiss. After a long moment, he released me, resting his forehead against mine, his voice carrying a suppressed smile. "No, we're not starting over. Iris Lynn. Our story is only just beginning." I finally broke free from the mire of my past, by the side of a man who loved me to his core, and whom I loved just as deeply. I welcomed my true rebirth.